Carl.
Well, hello, Michael Kitces. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm really good. We've got lots of snow in Utah, which is fantastic. Don't tell anyone though, because we don't want anybody else coming here.
Oh, those darn tourists, they take all your ski places.
I just saw a note from somebody who's like, I'm headed to Utah because we're getting pounded and nobody else is. So we'll just keep that quiet. By the time this comes out, I'll all have passed.
That's true. That's true. We record these a little ways in advance, so by the time anyone hears it, you will have already enjoyed all the snow there was to enjoy without them.
Exactly. That's what we need. Exactly.
It's good planning. That's really why we record these in advance, so that
Exactly.
you don't have to accidentally let out the word on what is currently good ski season in Utah.
That's exactly right. Perfect. What are we talking about today? Something exciting, I'm sure.
So we had a great question come in from listeners that I feel like is one of those moments that we've all been in. It's a pretty straightforward situation. You're sitting in a prospect meeting. You're about 5 minutes in, and it is clearly not a good fit. And not just personality wise, like they just don't have the financial wherewithal to make this work. Yeah. So how do you handle that moment in the meeting so you don't have to just be that person that says, go build some assets and come back, because nobody feels good about that.
Right.
So, how do you try to be useful and valuable in that meeting, right? Ideally, we give them some value and send them on their way with the value.
Yep.
Like, how do you handle that moment? So I guess there's sort of twofold to this. Like, how do you give them some value before you send them on their way? And or just how do you handle the awkwardness of the moment when you realize like they don't have the financial wherewithal to hire you and you have to be the person that says you don't have enough money to work with me? Yeah. So how do you handle this situation?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's obviously something I've thought a lot about. And one thing that really we've got to always keep in mind is this is inside the feelings you're having about how awkward this situation is largely inside baseball, meaning like the people, like out pointing out the window, the people out there don't know about this awkward feeling. You're making it awkward. I mean that with deep empathy, because and let me explain. Here's all we really need to say, and I want to talk about the deliverable because I feel really strongly about this, and I know I'm wrong, but I feel really strongly about it. And what I mean by that is I'm sure there are other ways to do it. I'm going to present it as if there's only one way, and I know I'm wrong about that. So first thing, it's really simple just to say, and I don't know if it's 5 minutes in or 15 minutes in, or you listen. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I just want to get this out of the way so we can discuss the awkwardness. At some point, it's really easy to say, Michael, it's clear based on what I've learned about you today. Thank you for taking the time today. It's clear that based on what we do here, this would not be a good fit. That's not awkward.
Why not, Carl? Why? Well, I heard you were a great financial planner and I need help.
Yeah. So you're putting me on the spot on what is this, a Thursday afternoon at 4:30?
Hey, we get put on the spot by prospects.
Okay, we're meeting today. So
yeah. Right, I mean, it's like this is the script that plays in our heads, or not plays in our heads. Well, maybe
I've never had anybody say why, but if somebody, which is odd, and I think that that's not odd, actually. It's odd that it's coming out of my mouth, but I've never had anybody say why. If somebody did say why, it'd be pretty simple to me. And I think the best way to approach these things is talk like you were talking to a friend, right? We help people with a specific set, insert niche. Like, to me, that's the easiest place to go, right? We help people with a specific set of challenges, right? And
so we help doctors who are trying to get through, buying into their medical practice as partners, and you are not one of those. So like, easy when I've got a tight niche. Easier.
Yeah, we work with entrepreneurs with a successful exit. Right? Oh, I am an entrepreneur with a successful exit. Well, then we're not having this conversation anyway, right? Right. So if there's but if it's just like, okay, we work with retirees and you don't happen to have enough money, Like we can talk about that in a minute. Like, how do you handle if they ask you why, the only answer you possibly have is because you don't have enough money. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I think the answer to that question is, look, based on the business we run here, there's a certain level of complexity that we deliver. Like the service model we use here, it requires a certain level of complexity. That's not where you're at right now. And so it wouldn't be a good fit because we're overkill. Right? Something along those lines. And I've never had that come up because it was always around a niche. Now, let's talk real quick for a minute about this strong, fancy feeling I have about the deliverable, because then we can back into it and break it down and we can see what you say and go through it. Like, I actually believe that everybody deserves a one-page plan, right? And of course, it can be a less robust one-page plan, like it can be a half-page plan, right? Like, I actually believe, and I did this originally because of altruistic reasons. I was just like, look, I got in this business to help people. I found out pretty quickly it ended up becoming a really great business development process. But to me, it's not that hard to listen, ask really good questions for 35 or 40 minutes, even an hour. I would shift into practice mode. So it's not like I'm wasting my time. I'd be like, oh, this is a great chance for me to learn. How can I listen better? Like, give this person the experience that every human deserves of being asked interesting questions, thoughtful questions, and listened to around the topic of money. Just give that as a gift. Now, what do you get from it? You practice, right? Like, practice. And then in my mind, I believe
So I'm doing this in like, I'm going to come back to them with the one-page plan later, or like
yeah. Here's what I would say. You know, it's I would have listened the whole time. I decided in the first 5 minutes based on the text. I think we got this off the Toot machine, right? Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah, the tutor.
That's not what they call it, but yes.
That's fine. So based on the tweet, we learned in the first 7 minutes, pattern matching. We're all good at this. We've all been there. It happens almost all the time, right? Like, we learn. I don't think we say anything there. I think I give somebody the amazing experience, which no one gets anywhere else. You're the only people who can do it, right? Like, I listen to them, I ask good questions, and then at the end I tell them, hey, it may not be, it's clear to me after we've talked, Michael, that working with us as a client wouldn't be a good fit, but I've learned a lot about you and I have a couple of ideas. And so here's what I'd love to do. I used to say, come back for the second meeting. But I think now in this scenario, why not just say, here's what I want to do. Give me a couple of days to just absorb what I've heard. And I'm going to write a list of suggestions, just action steps of what I think you should do. And I'll send that to you. Let's call that, I mean, I don't even know, I would just call it an executive summary of our meeting. Let me just write up our meeting notes. I wouldn't call it a one-page plan. I wouldn't imply anything more than that. And then I would just take the time to write a couple of simple suggestions. Open an account at Vanguard and invest $50 a month in the S&P 500 index fund. Pay down this, refinance your mortgage, like whatever the simple suggestions were. And even easier if I can charge for that on an hourly basis. But if I can't, if I'm just a straight AUM advisor, what's the harm, right? And to me, for altruistic reasons, for karma reasons, like, that's a reason enough. And what I found, especially if I was clear about who my ideal client was in that conversation, that person became a good referral source. I had that happen. And they didn't refer people like them. They referred my ideal client that I described to them. So that's the arc of where I would go. And now I'm super happy to talk about it.
So I have to admit, I'm still a little bit stuck on the first part. Like,
me too.
why is it this awkward for them? I mean, you kind of set this up as like, this is awkward. Like, we're making this awkward in our heads. And I get it. I do think there are a bunch of things that, like, we build it way up further in our heads to, like, we build it up to be messy in our heads than it really actually is for the person on the other end. I have to be like, I did not think of this as one of those situations. Now, perhaps I'm just channeling like my own prior experiences when I really had this crop up the first few times. I had no idea how to handle it. And I basically just said something to the effect of, well, we have certain asset minimums here, dot, 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 and you don't have enough. And like, it was awkward. It didn't feel good. Like, they very clearly visibly felt rejected and were not happy about that. So like, I feel like this isn't just in my head awkward. This is really awkward if it's not handled well.
If it's 100% about you don't have enough money.
But it is.
Well,
sucks that that's the reality, but like, it is.
But we painted a scenario here where it's not a good fit, right? If it was there,
it's a money fit. I mean, like,
if it's 100%,
I just don't want to work with you because you're an unpleasant human being. Like, I don't have a problem with that one. I just say it's not a good fit, and I exit the conversation. Like, it's the, it's the answer is you need to build some assets and come back because you don't have enough right now. To me, like, those are the painful, awkward ones.
Yeah.
Like, pretty awkward.
Look, if that's the only thing we're talking about, and you can't get away with it's not a good fit, like, I would still try. It's not a good fit. And if somebody said why, well, then we got to now let's talk about the awkward piece. It's awkward at that point. If the only reason why is because you don't have enough money, it's awkward at that point, right?
So how am I navigating that?
How are you navigating it?
Well, so my takeaway, having gone through situations like this over the years, I'm determined not to put myself in that position in the first place, which means like, that's why I advocate for things like put your minimums on your website. I mean, whether it's minimum fee or minimum assets or whatever it is, like, put out there, here's what you need. And you know what happens? They look, people in the modern era look on the internet to find out what's going on. They don't call.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to have an awkward conversation. Like, they screen themselves out very effectively if you just put the information out there. We have such a tendency to hide the information, and then they don't know that they don't meet our minimums, so they come in, and then we have to reject them to their face, which feels even worse. Or we don't want to reject them to their face, and then we take them as accommodation clients that we probably shouldn't have taken and get stuck in the business because we take all these accommodation clients because we didn't want to reject them in their face because we didn't even want to reject them on the website in the first place. So I mean, the approach that I ended out with, because I really don't like these conversations and find them very awkward, is I'm just going to get really clear on my website about here's the minimums of what it takes. And like, if you don't have that, it's cool. In fact, for, my prior firm, when we did that for years, like, I would actually tell people if they even just approached in social situations, they're interested, like, would love to have that conversation. This isn't really like the best place to talk about the business and what we do. So here's what I'd suggest, like, go to our website. It has a lot more information about just what we do and how we work with clients. And then follow up with me next week if you want to continue the conversation. And if I had a strong understanding that they probably were a qualified client, I might follow up with them a little bit more proactively. Otherwise, I will leave the ball in their court, because I knew that our minimums were very clear on our website. So at some point, someone's going to click like the fees and minimums page, and they're going to see what it is. And if that's the number, they just self-select themselves out off of the website. And all I had to do was say, hey, like, why don't you just go here? Because it would be good so you understand the full breadth of what we do. I do some nerdy tax things, but we got like a whole offering. Go take a look at more of what we have on our website. It explains it pretty well. And then touch base with me next week, or I'll touch base with you next week, depending on how much I want to drive this, and let's continue the conversation. And like, once I started doing that, these conversations basically just went to zero, because people would self-select themselves out because we were clear about what it takes. I know one advisor that actually takes this one step further, and if you do the contact on their website, they've got a little questionnaire in their contact form. And like, literally in the questionnaire, it says, I'm is something to the effect of like, I'm comfortable with the firm's minimum fees. And you have to check yes, or the form won't complete. So like, you have to acknowledge, I'm forgetting exactly how he words it. It's pretty tactful, but like, you have to acknowledge the firm's minimums and that you're okay with where they are before the meeting can even be set. So he never has this conversation because he filters them out. I was never quite that in your face in the advisory firm context, and I was part of a multi-partner firm, and not all my partners wanted to go to that level. But But I got the minimums on our website so that I could steer anyone there where we were having this social conversation, and just the number of non-qualified prospects basically went to zero.
Yeah.
They really do look. I mean, ironically, that was the affirmation for me, that prospects really do read the website, because the non-qualified prospect inquiries just went to zero once we were clear about it.
For another day, I'd love to. We need to do another episode on whether or not about this idea of including fees on a website, because I actually have a slightly different take on that. I just don't think people are in the position to understand the context based on the website, but that's a whole nother subject. But the idea of minimums, I think that's a great idea. And now that I've sort of caught up to the conversation, because you did spring this on me at 4:05 on a Thursday, or Thursday afternoon, when all I'm thinking about is skiing. Here's how I always think about this from like the human level. Like, what would I actually say? And what I actually said, because I was in, like, remember, I worked for a big brokerage firm with a bullet symbol for a while before I started my own firm. We couldn't put minimums, like, like there wasn't a website.
You can't control the website or any of that.
Ended up there. So I had this conversation a lot. And what I would actually say was, hey, Michael, it kills me, right? Like, I would just say, this is one of the most challenging conversations I have. But the reality of the business that I run here. Now, where I was going with the like awkward in our own heads is, if you go see an ankle surgeon and you've got a knee problem and they tell you they can't help you, that's not awkward.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I was going. And I could see.
I would agree. Like, the more clearly we are defined in who we go after, it should get pretty clear, right? As you said, like, you have a knee problem and I'm a heart doctor, right? Like, you're a young doctor getting going and I specialize in retirees. Like, this gets pretty straightforward at that point.
I remember my friend, we went to the same church locally, and he works for a big firm. I think we've talked about this before. I won't name the firm, but it has G and S as its initials. And he for some reason I was like, how do you deal with, because we'd have all the people in the community that would come and ask for help. And I was like, how do you say no? And he's like, what do you mean? How do I say? I just say, like, I'm a heart surgeon and you need ankle surgery, right? Like, it's not a good fit. So back to our real life situation, though, is like, okay, yeah, that's cute. But the real question here was, it's because they don't have enough money. That's the only reason they're not a good fit. And if that's the case, then I think you're in a situation where I think you're right. Like, it is a little awkward because it's about, you don't measure up, right? Like, and especially about this.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes it feel bad.
Yeah. This thing called money, like, and you are a failure, right? Like, all of that imagery that we have in our minds around financial success. And so that's why I think I would just say that, Michael, this is my least favorite conversation, because I really enjoyed our conversation here. But the reality of the business that I run here is, we only work with clients with $1 million. We only work with clients with 250,000, whatever the number is. But what I would love, so I can't have you as a client, right? But what I'd love to do is, you've spent the time with me today. I've learned a lot about you. Could I put together a list of suggestions on what you think I should do? Because frankly, Michael, like, even if we could take you on as a client, you don't really need what we do right now, right? So could I just point out, if it'd be okay with you, what I'd love to do is I'll send you an email, give me a couple of days to put it together. What I used to say was, I wouldn't say any of that in the first meeting. I would say, great, let's schedule the second meeting. And it's just an altruistic thing. And now I wouldn't do that because it's just too much time. So I just shortcut it. At the end of the first meeting, say, Michael, this is always one of my most challenging conversations, but because of the reality of the business that I run here, we only work with clients with X. But we've spent an hour together here, and you've told me a bunch, and I can already see a couple of things. Oh, and I'd insert that last piece too. Like, and to be honest, your situation doesn't warrant you don't need me right now. Could I point out a couple of things? And then just give me a couple of days, and I'll shoot you an email with a list of things that I would tackle first, and just go down the list. Feel free to chime in, to check in with me every once in a while if I can be helpful. That's how I'd handle that. That's just actually like the truth.
Yeah. So I will say the other way I used to handle this, before I managed to get us to put the minimums on the website. So we got a lot more of these. I had gone online to Garrett Planning Network's website. So Garrett's the network for advisors that are hourly and strong focus on working with folks essentially in the middle class and mass affluent. And so I went on Garrett. I found 2 or 3 Garrett advisors in the area. They charge straight hourly. They'll take anyone who is willing to pay the hourly rate for an hour, a few of their time. And so I had a couple of Garrett planners I knew that I actually spent a little bit of time getting to know them, bought them a meal and got to know them because I wanted to really get comfortable. Like, if this is where I'm going to send someone, I want to make sure you're actually going to take care of them well. So did a little bit of the diligence on my end. And when someone came in to say, and we had that moment of they're not a good fit and it's just a money thing, that I would say to them something effective, well, a version of what you said, look, I don't think we're a good fit because we do a lot of financial planning and ongoing asset management, and we have certain minimums around that. But I know a planner, his name is Jim. He works directly on an hourly basis simply to answer whatever questions you've got. I think he's actually a much better fit to simply jump in and ask the questions that you are asking about here. So let me give you an introduction to Jim, because I know it's really hard to just find advisors that are a good fit. And so that's the value I'm going to bring you today. I wouldn't say it quite that way, but that's the value I'm going to bring you today.
I'm
going to help you actually find the right advisor.
But wait, Michael, why am I not a good? Why do you think Jim's better than you? My friend sent me to you.
Yeah, because we work with clients on an ongoing basis for financial planning and investment management, and we have $250,000 minimums. But Jim works with people directly on an hourly basis, and you can pay him for exactly the amount of time that you need. So, I would acknowledge we have minimums, but I would try to frame it in the context of, look, it's really hard to figure out which advisors do what and how to pick amongst us because it's really hard to tell us apart. So I've actually done some homework to find advisors that would be a good fit for someone in your situation, and I'd love to make an introduction to you. And I did find in those situations, people were generally grateful at that point because the sentiment usually was something to the effect of, yeah, I can't tell y'all apart. I have no idea how to figure out who's actually a good advisor that's a good fit for me. And so if you are giving me a shortcut to just the advisor that can actually work with me, I appreciate that. It was genuine. I got a lot of appreciation of, the value doesn't have to be answering their questions. The value can be showing them how to actually find the right advisor for them, because it's hard for people. We're used to it because we live in the industry all along, but it's hard for people. And for any advisor who's ever worried about referring a client out to an advisor they don't know, and you're I don't know if he or she's going to be that good. I hate to make the referral and have it not go well. You're in the industry and you struggle with that. So imagine what it's like for every prospect who has no idea how to understand our industry, our channels, the rules, the standards, the designations, all that stuff. And they're trying to figure out how to navigate our industry. So I felt like the opportunity was, if I can find the right advisors for them, the value I'm going to provide is I'm going to take a moment to explain to them just the different ways that advisors in the industry work and how to understand the right type of advisor for them, and introduce them to 1 or 2 that they can go to. Just say, this person is good, gotten to know him or her. They work with people just like you. They're a good fit. Here you go. But I still dislike the conversation so much that I also champion getting minimums on the website so the conversations go away. I will still own that.
Right.
I don't like the conversation because I didn't know how to, I guess, getting the point. I still didn't know how to have the conversation, send them out without at some point just saying we have minimums. So I tried to frame in a constructive, hey, part of what we do is literally ongoing investment management for people's sizable portfolios. And that's not not say and you don't have one, and that's not the service you're looking for. You've got these questions about your student loans and your credit cards. That's not what we're focused on here. That's what Jim does. So let me introduce you to Jim.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And that's something I did as well. You find a couple I mean, I remember using even recently, like using some of the find planner tools at someplace like Garrett or XY,
Yeah.
so that you could, and I think, right, just one little twist on that is go see Sally. Sally's an hourly planner, and based on our conversation, the first thing you want to make sure Sally knows is about this thing. But she'll know. But you like it's just like, hey, you got some value from our meeting. Boom. So I love that, and I think you're right. In the end, if you can't get away with it's not a good fit, and somebody asks you why, and the only reason why is because you don't have enough money, that's awkward. Guess what? You're an adult. You can have an awkward conversation. Just be honest.
Yeah, just I tried to frame it away from you don't have enough money and in the direction of one of the services that we provide here is managing people's ongoing portfolios, typically with at least $500,000. And that's one of the big things that they pay us for. ... Like, and you don't have that. Like, you don't have to fill in the blank there, but like they don't have that, and that's literally not the service they're looking for. And so again, it would give them an opportunity. Like I would try to set up the situation so that I don't have to reject them. I'm just going to get clear about what we do so they can reject me.
Yeah.
Because I'll be okay. And that empowers them and makes it feel less bad for them to say, well, a big piece of what we do is investment management for portfolios of at least $500,000. And they can say, oh, well, I don't need that. It's like, cool. Can I introduce you to someone else?
Yeah.
And it allows them to leave with dignity intact.
Totally. I hope whoever tooted that to us got the value they needed.
I hope so. Thank you, Carl.
Cheers. Yeah. Bye.